Let me throw this out there as another possible theory, which you did not explore, I don't believe, but it may be something Cap has some insight into as well. And that is the quality of the student teaching experience. Could you theorize that the edTPA might reduce the impact of the student teaching experience in that you are under a lot of pressure and you have to get a lot done, and you are certainly distracted from, to a certain extent, I believe, from student teaching. And I say that because there's some, I'm always trying to find out about predictive validity of various measures and what is going to predict a great teacher. And there was some research. Dan's done a lot of good work on student teaching. There's also a paper out of Germany, which we were looking at, that also said, the quality of the student teaching experience, I mean, the how well teachers did in their student teaching really does translate into how well they'll do in the classroom. So if you are suppressing the likelihood of student teaching being a high quality experience because you're distracted, not because for any other reason, but you've got two things to do instead of one, is there a chance that the edTPA reduces the impact of student teaching and therefore reduces the impact and then therefore it plays out with the effectiveness of a teacher? I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there because I think student teaching is really important. And we don't pay nearly enough attention to it. No one does. And that we ought to, that could it be the edTPA hurts it a bit?
So I do have quite a bit to say about this one. And I think that there is some evidence that under some conditions, students do experience it as a subtractive experience. Those conditions have to do with the disconnection between the student teaching context and the university context. And so I think, Kate, you are absolutely right that if there's any point of agreement in this messy world we all live in, it's that student teaching matters. But what really matters about student teaching is that it be a coherent experience that maps on to the kinds of ideas and practices that are taught in a university program. And when that alignment is well developed, when there's a coherence between what is taught at the university and what is taught in the field, then you don't have student teachers complaining about the subtractive effects of edTPA. What happens is when they go from a university that is talking about the work in one way into a student teaching setting that's talking about the world in another way, and oftentimes a way that's not oriented around systematic instruction, tensions arise, and students are kind of socialized, I would say, oftentimes into blaming the edTPA on that. I want to actually make a point here, which is maybe the thing that I most wanted to mention today, which is the edTPA and the Peck before it and other teaching performance assessments are an attempt to develop a concrete and shared language of practice that can be used as a tool for bridging in institutional practice, both within the university, across courses, and across coursework and field work. So the irony is that a tool which is aimed at making programs more coherent for student teachers and establishing a language with which people can negotiate and collaborate some kind of shared commitment to practices across coursework and fieldwork. The irony is that would end up functioning as a disruption to that very coherence. But the problem really goes back to the lack of organizational commitments to the work on both the university and the K-12 side. And the sad fact of the matter is, and if you want to read about this at length, I would just refer our listeners to the amazing study that Goodlad and his colleagues did back in the late 1980s of teacher education programs around the country, in which they documented to a in a brutally honest way just how profoundly disconnected universities and K-12 systems are around the work of teacher education, and how hard it is for people to bridge that gap with. So we've actually done quite a bit of research on this problem. And what we find again and again is that programs that make an organizational commitment, including allocation of time and attention to building coherence, building a context for sharing language and sharing practice across K-12 and university, they're quite successful with the edTPA. And they successfully managed to learn how to use the edTPA to talk about the problems in a way that everybody understands, and they can begin to navigate some kind of collaboration in resolving the problems they have with the program. So I think the really important thing here is to identify the problem is not about the tool per se, but about the lack of strong collaborative connections between the universities and the K-12 systems in which they're placing student teachers. Oftentimes, people don't even know one another. Student teachers are placed in a variety of classrooms where the cooperating teachers, as dedicated and smart and caring as they are, don't have any idea what's going on at the university. And even within the university, oftentimes people don't have any idea what's going on from course to course.
Oh, I know that to be the case.
I know you know that, and I know you've been raising that issue for a good number of years now.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
But anyhow, I think the important thing is that until we develop a common language, a concrete language that we share across courses and across coursework and fieldwork that allows us to understand problems in a collaborative way and work together to understand and resolve those problems, I fear that we are just caught in a recurring churn of lots of people that are smart people working really hard to do a better job, but being unable to get traction on a common understanding of the problem, much less common actions to remediate it. And when you read that John Goodlad study from almost 40 years ago now, it's shocking how contemporary it is. It is absolutely shocking. I wish I believed that we'd made substantial progress around those issues, but I fear we're trapped in kind of a churn of incoherence and miscommunication between K-12 and the university system around these issues. Sorry,
Kate, I want to say that I agree with 99% of what Cap said, but it wouldn't be a good conversation with Cap if there wasn't at least a 1% disagreement. So the one issue I would take with what Cap laid out is that I do think that the tool matters. So it's Cap, it's maybe just in a slip of the tongue, or maybe I misheard it, but I think that it's really important for all the theories of action that we discussed earlier on, that there be a connection between what is happening pre-service and that assessment and the outcomes that we care about in service, because the common language, the common purpose, all of that only matters if what you're being taught is connected with what we think constitutes effective teaching in service. So I do think that is a really fundamental part of the edTPA. I think it's a fundamental issue that we need to think about with regards to the edTPA or any of the pre-service assessments, whether they are licensure tests or other kinds of performance assessments, and that we don't have enough knowledge about the connections between what's going on pre-service and the quality of instruction in service.
I hate to dissolve that precious 1%, but I agree with that absolutely, and it's another problem of coherence, collaboration, and communication. So, and I would not say, nor would Ray Pichon or Linda Darling-Hammond or any of the folks that have been so central to the development of the EPA. I don't think there's any question that it's not a perfect tool. The important thing is to understand what the tool is trying to accomplish and to make sure that we don't give up on the effort, because I do not see any way of improving teacher education in a way that matters inside to the quality of the programs without working this problem more successfully than we have in the past.